Check, 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 check. Check, 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 check. One about. Awesome, so we're using the blue headset.
One, two, three, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Oh. Okay, there we go. Check, 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 1, 2, check. Check, 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 check. Good morning, all of you, this morning. Good to see you here in the sanctuary on this little drizzly September morning. We're delighted that you're here this morning. If you're joining us through our live stream worship, welcome wherever you might be around this world. We're delighted that you are with us here as well. As we gather in this beautiful worship space, we do so acknowledging that we gather here on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people and the unceded territories of the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh nations, peoples who have been on this land and cared for this land for at least 10,000 years. So it's getting busy now. Fall is upon us. I hope you've had a chance to pick up your fall program guide. If you haven't done that, there are more, I think, that you can gather probably out in the welcoming space. You can certainly look at it online as well. So the announcements just tend to get just a little bit longer at the beginning of the year. Colleen wants to remind you all that the Seniors Connection begins again this week, and that starts on this Wednesday at 10:30. It runs till 1 o'clock. There's lunch provided. There's exercises, all sorts of good things. And then David and Diane Reeser are going to be sharing pictures and stories of their recent trip to Israel. So I hope you will plan to come to that. Please register. The registration is supposed to close today, but I suppose you can get by with registering in today, tomorrow. Just let her know so they have numbers for that. Sandy has asked me to also remind you of the volunteer info session, which will be in room 201, just down the hall there. It takes place just after the worship service ends this morning, probably in about 10 minutes after that. And this is both for newcomers here at Highlands who are wanting to explore volunteer opportunities, and for anybody else who has been here for some time and just wants to check out what the volunteer opportunities. We need volunteers at this church. It's very difficult to operate this place without all you good people that do so many good things. So please plan to come to that. If you haven't registered, that's okay. Just head down to room 201 after worship, and Sandy will be there to greet you, and she'd be delighted that you will be there. She's also asked me to remind you of the Connections Workshop, Listening from the Heart, which takes place next Saturday. And you can read about that in the fall program guide or in your highlights. And it's a wonderful opportunity for people to explore something that might be interesting for them to do. And so look in the highlights on that or the fall program guide. Register for it. It's free for people that are already volunteering here at Highlands. And it's $25 for others, but do register for that. And the registration closes next Thursday. And there's a slow stitching workshop that takes place on Saturday, September 28th. There's information on that in your highlights. I think that'll be a neat experience for some of you, and if you'd register for that as well. And almost lastly, there is the fall study program called The Ridiculous Journey. Following a nobody from nowhere. That doesn't get you intrigued. I don't know what will. So that starts 24th of September. It's a Tuesday, I believe. And you want to register for that as well. So we have our new refugee has arrived, Basil. And he, as you can imagine, is somewhat overwhelmed by this change in his life. But we're delighted that he is here, and you will get an opportunity to meet him as we go forward along the way. And some of you, I know, have already done that. Later today at 2 o'clock, we will be celebrating the life of Bernie Elliott, Lorraine's husband of many, many years. It was a long and varied and eclectic life that Bernie lived, and I hope that many of you will be here at 2 o'clock to celebrate Bernie's life. And then next Sunday at 2 o'clock as well, Margaret Main, who certainly had a long and wonderful life and was a big part of this congregation for many, many years. We celebrate her life next Sunday as well. So I think that's it for announcements, unless somebody else has something that they want to say. If not, let's just take a moment to center ourselves, take in a deep breath, and feel that you are grounded in this place and in the presence of God. We will ring the prayer bowl, and you can stand as the Christ candle enters.
Friends, at Highlands United Church, we are a community made up of people who are, well, lost and found, and in search of a genuine faith and in search of a spiritual home. And some of us have found it here, and some of us are still searching. We are a community that tries to live true to the ways of the gospel and the ways of unbounded love and justice and peace. We don't always live up to that. We don't always do it perfectly or elegantly. So we're also a community of hope and forgiveness. But we come here believing wholeheartedly that every one of us is at times a lost sheep, a lost coin, a lost child of God, and at other times we are found in the glorious celebration of God's love. So I don't know which way it is for you today. What I do know is the unbounded love and grace of God is present here, envelops you, embraces you. So let us celebrate that. Let's sing.
Would you please join me as we say together our opening prayer? We pause at the opening of this worship to sense your presence, gracious God. Your presence can be seen in the rustling wind, in the warming rays of the sun, in the sound of rain on the window. We sense your presence as your people gather today. And in the melodic sounds of music, wherever we are, we know that you are with us. Wherever we go, we know that your presence can find us. So as we open to your presence, let your Spirit find us now, drawing us together, and bringing us ever closer to you, we pray.
I would like to call all of the children and youth up to the front. We have something very special we're going to be doing this morning. So come on up.
There's lots of room.
Come sit. Good job. Just sit. Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, we're almost there. Yeah. Excellent. So, today is a special day here at Highlands. As we begin a new season, we were here last week to have kind of Welcome Back Sunday, and then this begins a new season. In Children's Church, we focus today on the difference that God is calling us to make together right here at Highlands and in our immediate community. We're called by God to work together to make the world a more loving and more just and compassionate place.
Here we work and learn together, and as we begin a new season of learning together, we commit ourselves to one another and to God. We call that making a covenant. A covenant is a promise about how we treat each other.
So some of you have been at Highlands United Church summer camps, and so you'll know this covenant that happens at camp in order to make sure that everyone is able to have fun and gets treated respectfully. So in a similar way, we make a covenant for our life in Sunday school. And today is the first day of that. The covenant includes children and youth and teachers and leaders and actually the whole congregation as we gather here and wherever we gather. So are you guys up for making that covenant and making this beginning together?
Okay, so what I would like to do is call up our teachers and leaders for the coming year, and they include Georgia Keir, so come stand up right here, Maddie Marchant, Anya Warren, Emily Westwick, she couldn't be with us this morning, Bella Kershaw, Emily Anderson, Jamie Adel, Chris Medill, and Carl Steffens. And we also call up Maddie Keir, who Maddie and Chris and Carl are going to continue to be our youth leaders this year, and we are so blessed to have them. And also, Bella is directing our God's Free Spirits choir this year.
So a covenant is a commitment to each other and to God. So to the teachers and the leaders, I have a question. Do you commit, let me get this right, do you commit to honor those who you serve and teach through respectful relationships, caring compassion, thoughtful preparation, and a spirit of joy and gratitude? And if so, please answer, we do.
Okay, and now to all the children and youth. Do you commit to share your thoughts, to listen to others, to serve and build respectful relationships with one another as you learn and grow together? And if so, please answer, we do. Wonderful.
Awesome. So, to the congregation, do you commit to help and support these children, youth, and teachers and leaders with your encouragement, understanding, and financial support? And if so, please answer, we do.
So we would like to say together our Sunday school covenant. Just hope it is up there.
Up there. Here's
Is it up there?
hoping.
Okay,
There's no
excellent.
slide.
So, gather
do the
round,
call.
friends. Gather round. We're going to say it together, okay? Okay, can we say it? Okay. We
believe in sharing God's love with everyone.
We believe in teaching the values of Christ. We believe in being present in body, mind, and spirit when called to teach. We believe that every voice deserves to be heard and respected. We believe in leaders who lead with enthusiasm, positivity, and a calming spirit.
My goodness. Okay.
We
believe that
preparation is the best tool.
for success and leaders.
Woo! We
believe
believe
in
in
the
nurturing
nurturing
our
of
spiritual
spiritual
lives
lives
outside of our teaching community. We believe in collaboration and a supportive team teaching approach to our work. We believe that God guides us in all that we do.
All right. So, thank you. Why don't you guys have a seat back here? Because we've got an additional layer of covenant. And that covenant includes the work that Bella is doing in God's Free Spirits Choir, because there's a lot of leadership that happens there. There is another covenant that begins as this season begins. And we've seen reference to it on a number of occasions. It's a covenant of online ministry. This is a relatively new kind of ministry in the United Church of Canada, and we at Highlands have been offered the opportunity to create a real presence with people through the internet and to develop genuine online Christian community. We have been given financial resources through the Pacific Mountain region of the United Church of Canada to launch this online ministry. And a committee within Highlands has worked hard to put together a plan. This committee includes Michael Soderling, Aidan Roberts, Elliot Best, Carrie Karam, who is present right now via live stream, Sandy Parker, Dave Wilson, and Noel Holland. Some of you are busy right now taking care of the technical requirements to do this ministry. But for those of you who are free to come forward, if you could come forward now. Yeah. There's a bunch of you. There should be. Yeah. And together with the Ministry and Personnel Committee, we have found, and appointed a half-time minister to lead this new initiative, building on the work that has been done at Highlands for about 8 years now. And that minister is Andrea Irwin. If you wanna come over. So we're going to pray for these people and this ministry. And as we offer this prayer and blessing, I want to recognize and imagine, and help you imagine, the whole community that is part of this work. It involves us here, and the committee that is in front of you, and the other committee people who are busy making it happen. And it's that committee's work and life. It involves Andrea. It also involves searchers and seekers and disciples and curious onlookers and people who long for the love of God to take hold in their lives that we have yet to connect with. So we broaden our imagination as we make this covenant to include all those who are presently engaged and all those who will yet be engaged in this ministry. And we join together in prayer. So I'm going to place my hand on Andrea's shoulder. If you want to come and gather around and do that too, on behalf of all of us, and let us pray together. Oh God, you have called us into ministry together, and we are grateful. Thank you for those who have led us in this direction, for their capacity and willingness to imagine new ways of being faithful. We thank you for those in the wider church who, out of a deep desire to bear the gospel love in the world, are supporting this ministry financially. And we thank you for these volunteers and their eagerness to be part of your great work in this place. And we thank you for Andrea, for calling her, equipping her, and placing her in our midst.
God, we acknowledge that the work of these disciples is a new thing, that your word and your love is constantly drawing us in fresh directions, urging us to seek the edges and bring in the out. Through this ministry, we long to expand the walls of Highlands to offer its safety and community to those places, and we long to teach the radical ways of Christ to those who otherwise might feel without hope, faith, or family. God, we ask you to meet us all here in this ministry, the staff, the volunteers, the congregation, and all those we aim to reach but have not yet come to know. We ask you to guide us, to encourage us, and to make your presence known in all that we do. May this work be your work.
O God of this new day, send your Holy Spirit upon all involved in this work. Let your radical love, your sacred justice, and your transforming presence be at work in this committee and in Andrea and in all who gather in Christian community in this way. Give them energy for the work, wisdom in their decision-making and choices, joy in each day, tenacity in times of adversity, and in all things, your grace and tender love through Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Let's sing together. Let us join together in prayer. Holy One, your people gather, and we are your people. This is the world that you have made and that you love with an unending and boundless love, and we are so grateful for that love and that you have woven into the universe and into our lives and into our very being and into this community here. Your love prompts us to take risks, to live with an open heart, to care and carry burdens for one another. And now in this time of prayer, we unburden ourselves to you, trusting that you are close, that your love is here, and capable of carrying whatever we have been carrying. Oh God, for a world in which, while healing and cleansing rains bathe us here, wild winds and rains devastate the landscape of Caribbean islands. While people carefully plant trees to rebalance the tender scale of the climate, in one place the Amazon lungs of the planet are laid waste. Indeed, God, we are lost and found as a global community, and we need your healing, your justice, your wisdom. As we move more deeply into this season of our life here at Highlands, we pray for our collective life, that your stunning gospel blessing will permeate every corner of that life, every moment filled with possibility, every tangled dilemma softened by your grace. That your Spirit prevail upon us, that our life might be sustained by your breath, your holy wind, your exciting fire. Loving God, we have gathered up the pieces of our lives and our ministry together, and we place them in your hands. We take individual names and ministries and situations and bring them before you, trusting that you know better than we what they need. For Leonard, Diane, Olive, for Alex, Smedman's family, for Lorraine and family, for Joanne, Michelle, for Samantha and Robin and Janine and Gwen, Jean and Peter, and Carrie, Ryan, for Fran, James, the Davis and George families, for Karen, Mary and Rob, Pat and Bud, Sue, Kim and Christine, for Jean and Bud and Maud, Michael, for Rowena and the List family, Dennis and Doreen, Dave and Sheila, for the family of Margaret Main, Len, Suzanne, and Dave. We pray for Max and family, June and Brian, Dave and Joy, Arnie and Allison, Marion, Margaret, Jean and Hugh, Bernice and Al, Heather, Norm, Clancy, Michaela, and Carolyn. Hear our prayer for the Artisana Collective in Guatemala, for Andrea, Ingrid, Myra, Myrna, Sandra, for the Congress that Sandra serves. Alicia and Alvaro. For Nikki, Marion, Jensen, Stewart families. Oh God, this is a long list, and our hearts are connected with each of these people in some way or another. Hear our prayer. Reach into our lives and guide us, that we may be a part of your loving, grace-filled, saving work as we seek to follow in the way of Jesus, whose words we now sing together.
So we come to the time of offering in this service, and yet we've already seen so much that has been offered here through our folks that are involved with our live stream ministry, with the young people that have stepped forward to offer themselves as leaders to our church school programs and our youth programs. We've heard your prayers and we've heard your voices in song. There's much offering that takes place, and one of those offerings that we do each week, of course, is asking you to make an offering from your resources. And we do that now because that's an important part of the life of this church and the work of this church. So we ask that you make that offering. And as you do that, we're going to let you sink into a video that is a reimagining of the story of the prodigal son. This is a story of a daughter, and it fits well with the story of being lost and being found and being loved. So now your offering will be received.
Morning comes and I have spent every decent thing I am. Pockets empty, now it's you and me. I've been foolish, rash, unruly, taking pride in all I have taken from you. Now it's you and me. And this is love when I give my heart to everyone but you. And this is love when I have turned my back away from you. And this is love when I have left you for the selfish things I do. And this is love that you still love me in spite of me. Seconds pass and I think back to every time I have said I am sorry. Now it's you and me. So can I say these words you for the selfish things I do. And this is love, that you still love me in spite of me. Morning comes and I think back to every time I have said I am sorry.
Rise up, rise up, rise up, oh my soul. Rise up and sing this blessing to God's name. Rise up, rise up, rise up, oh my soul. Rise up and sing this blessing to God's name. Rise up, rise up, rise up, oh my soul. Rise up and sing this blessing to God's name. Rise up, rise up, rise up, oh my soul. Rise up and sing this blessing to God's name.
Please join me to say together our prayer of dedication. Loving God, accept the gifts we bring to you today. We give them not because you expect it or demand it, but because you have given us so much, and we want to share the blessing with others. We offer them in Jesus' name.
Today's reading is about the parables of the lost sheep and silver coin. The first illustrates God's concern for those who lack the ability to find him. Instead, God seeks them. The second parable intensifies the feeling of human helplessness and divine concern. Reading from the first part of Luke 15. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. Which of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me. I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who need no repentance. Or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me. I've found the coin that I've lost." Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Hear what the Holy Spirit is saying to the church.
Will you join me in prayer? Loving God, we open to your presence and to your word and to your wisdom in this moment, and I ask that you take the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts and the lives that we live and shape them according to your life-giving Spirit. Amen. Some years ago, after I had been in ministry in Salmon Arm for a number of years and people had started to get to know me, I was invited to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous roundup. Ever heard of a roundup before? I hadn't at the time, so this was a learning experience for me. A roundup is a yearly gathering of people involved in 12-step programs, and in this particular case, it was Alcoholics Anonymous. In Salmon Arm, that means a few hundred people gather at a community center, and there's talks, and there's discussions, and there's really good food. And I was there for the Saturday evening. It's a whole weekend event. Invited to come and speak for 5 minutes on the spiritual dimensions of Alcoholics Anonymous. I know. That's a funny thing to contemplate. I mean, not the spiritual dimensions of Alcoholics Anonymous, but the idea of a preacher speaking for 5 minutes on any particular subject. It felt like a good old-fashioned revival meeting. Honestly, that's the feel that this gathering had. Milestones of sobriety were raucously celebrated with huge rounds of applause. A very engaging, richly honest speaker who told us of her own journey of recovery with enough detail that you knew she had scraped bottom and come back. And with enough humor and humility that you could bear the hearing of her story. The Spirit was present, uniting us as simple human beings struggling to make our way in the world. Which made my job of pointing out the spiritual dimensions really, really easy. And everyone in the room had one cluster of experience in common, and we knew it. At some point in time, we had all been lost. And at some point in time, we had all been found. And likely at other points in time, we were lost again and found again and lost again and found again. And we were all somewhere on the path. Everyone was on a different place on the road, going one way or another. The destination felt dodgy at the best of times because every time you round a curve thinking that you're heading for the finish line, a whole new vista of unfamiliar territory would open up. But as I left that evening, I'll always remember it. I could think of no more worthy road to be on with others, because I knew that along with heartache and hope, the very presence of God, God's very self, could be found on the road, and that it was in some way the road home. Now, my connection with AA at that point had been mostly through friends and through experience of having people come and ask me if I would be with them in their fifth step. Now, if you're unfamiliar with AA, fifth step logically follows the fourth step, which is the fourth step being a fearless and searching moral inventory of your life. Anybody who's going to embark on that step has my respect. The fifth step, then, is when after a person has done that, they come to a person and tell the story. Tell it all. Get it off your shoulders. Get it off your chest. Openly, honestly, fully. So going to this roundup was such a gift because I was led into a community of people who had been lost and found and were honest about it and willing to just be real with each other, fiercely real. It felt really sacred. It felt to me like church at its best. Church the way I think God longs for church to be. The trouble with church, the trouble with any gathering of human beings is that we're human. And we create human organizations and institutions. We get all tangled up in theology and personality and ego and status and fear of losing our place and like just a whole bundle of things. We get caught up in the way that the dominant culture wants to rate us and put us on scales and judge us on all kinds of scales. We forget, because we're human, we forget that we are born naked and we leave the world very similarly. But when 2 or 3 people gather in the name of just about anything, we have a tendency to forget that. And that's exactly what the Pharisees were up to in our reading from the gospel. They wanted to make sure that everyone was following the rules. And Jesus said, well, none of that is important. And that kind of rankled with them. God's love overwhelms the rules. Allow yourself to get overwhelmed by the love of God, and your life will be different forever. Allow yourself to let go of doing it right all of the time, or earning your place at the table, because that's a futile pursuit and a very slippery slope upon which every single one of us will one day lose our footing. Allow yourself to realize that we are all at once lost and found. Lost in all the impossible rating scales and measures of worthiness that we can see around us, and found by the astounding love of God. In this 15th chapter of the Gospel of Luke, we find Jesus talking all about the gospel reaching out to gather lost ones. The community that gathered around Jesus included lost ones, left out ones, left off the list ones, out in the cold ones. And in Luke, Jesus has been traveling around Galilee and just saying what he says about the astounding love of God, the all-inclusive love of God, in people's houses and over meals and teaching and healing. And over time, his reputation has led to the the reality that a fairly wild collection of leftovers of the human condition have gathered in community, following him wherever he goes. And those who want the community to be clean and well ordered and nice and pure are struggling with that. This is a weird looking group of people. I mean, look at the company he's keeping, they say. He welcomes sinners and actually eats with them. That's just unseemly. And today we hear his response to that. He offers 3 parables. We read the first 2, but there are 3 in a row, and they're very, very similar. You have the lost sheep. You have the lost coin. You have the lost child. I love the way he puts it to them, because he just goes straight at it. Which one of you, if you have 100 sheep and you lost one, would not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go off in search of the one? The thing is, that's a real dilemma. Would you really risk the 99 for the sake of one? Would you? Or would you cut your losses? Gee, I hate losing sheep, but I got 99. Seriously. But Jesus, in Jesus' world, in the gospel way, you just never give up. You just don't. And when that one is found, there is great rejoicing. And then he says, which woman, householder, having 10 coins and losing one, would not search night and day, day and night, until that coin is found? And here we are having a dilemma again. When do you stop? Do you search for a day? How about 2? How about 3 or 4 or a week? When do you stop and cut your losses? In God's gospel way, in Jesus' way, you never give up. You just never give up. And then, in the piece of writing that comes right after our reading today, he takes it the next step. And this isn't about sheep or coins anymore. It's about people. And he tells the story of the lost son, the prodigal son. And the implication is clear. There's no getting around it. Which one of you would have cut him loose? Is there ever a circumstance in which human losses are okay? Jesus is saying that the heart of God is stirred by the suffering of people, and God rejoices in restoration, in reconciliation. This is a preferential option for the marginal, for the folks on the edge. And he has discovered that there is a whole lot of people on the edge as he goes around Galilee talking, because they all gather around him. In fact, if any of us are really honest about our lives, I mean a roundup kind of honest, every one of us can find ourselves on the edge for one reason or another. Maybe we have. Maybe you have. Every one of us can be lost or found for one reason or another. So the community of the gospel, to which Jesus is calling his community and calls us, is a community that respects that and is humble enough to admit that, and are just living in the joy and the freedom of a love which searches us out and finds us and brings us home. So the community of the gospel is one that is humble and rejoices. And those are two markers of the gospel: humility and joy. There's a line in the anthem that you are about to hear that goes like this. Well, I don't know which way you're going. I don't know if you're lost or found. All that I know is you've been forgiven. I tell you, this train is glory bound. I love that line. Because I don't know all the details of your life. None of us really even know all the details of anyone's life. In some ways, including our own. Well, I don't know. Who am I to ever say whether you are lost or found? And that's what Jesus is saying to the Pharisees. Who are you to say who is lost or found? He didn't judge them for their theology or their approach to faith or life or anything. He just simply said, I don't know which way you're going, whether you are lost or found. I will simply tell you what I do know. And that is, in the great sweep of God's love, you're forgiven. It's done. It's over. You're free. You're loved. And there is nothing you can do to control that. Whether you accept it or not, well, that's up to you, but it's there. It's reality, according to the gospel. Now, God knows we don't always do a perfect job of showing it. But everyone who walks through that door on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday afternoon or any other time is going somewhere. Lost or found or somewhere in between. And every one of us is variously rich or poor or somewhere in between. And when it comes to faith, every one of us is filled with certainty or filled with doubt or somewhere in between. And we are man or woman or somewhere in between, gay or straight or somewhere in between, young or old or somewhere in between, far from home or somewhere in between. And I don't know which way it is for you today. But this I know. You are loved. You are forgiven. You belong. You are free. And you are welcome in the community of the lost and found. Amen. Made it. We are glory bound, whether we know it or not, whether we feel it or not. The grace of God is drawing us out into the world and drawing us into life. So be free. Be free. You are already set free. Go and live free. And the grace of God, the love of Christ, and the communion and the inspiration of the Spirit will be with us all. Amen.